So let's move on to gossip and power in the workplace, as covered in the Kurland and Peld reading. And I love all the stock images I was able to find of workplace interactions. Like this one, you got a group of guys gossiping. One of them's like pointing, like, "Oh boy, oh yeah," and then this other guy has to like hold his finger into his ear to stop all the scintillating gossip from spilling out. And then this lady on the outside clearly isn't impressed by whatever they're gossiping about. It seems like she is likely the target of said gossip, which can be an unpleasant sensation when you find out others are talking about you behind your back. But contrastingly, it can be pleasant if you're a part of the gossip being shared. If you're privileged enough to receive gossip about another, have the tea be spilled. So spilling the tea or gossip has traditionally been defined as idle chatter, chit chat, the evil tongue. So traditionally, uh, gossip has been demonized. Like even in religious writings, like in the Bible, there's all sorts of statements like "You shall not bear false witness." Because, like we said, with religion, it's a discourse, it's a disciplinary discourse that's trying to produce obedient, well behaved people. And gossip is a potentially subversive practice. So, religious discourse and all discourses really try to discourage people from engaging it by making it seem like it's this unholy, this evil, this unproductive thing. When in reality, gossip can be used for good, for productive purposes. Like I said, it's a subversive practice. It could potentially subvert the existing power relations. So the Kurland and Peld reading defines workplace gossip as informal and evaluative talk in an organization, usually among no more than a few individuals about another member of that organization who is not present. So these are the kind of criteria and features that you'd have to meet in order for your interaction to be considered gossip. So it's informal talk and it's also evaluative in some way. It's judging that person in some way, the person who isn't included, who is the topic of the gossip. And it differs from the grapevine, like you may have heard. I heard it through the grapevine. The grapevine is more, it is informal and it is a peer to peer network, but it could involve a lot more people than just a few. And it's about a wide range of informal communication. So, upcoming job opportunities, downsizing, just the goings on of the workplace beyond just focusing on information about specific people, which is what differentiates the grapevine from gossip. And I pretty much just made this slide about spilling the beans as an excuse to put up a picture of Kevin from The Office spilling his beans literally when he spilled his chili all over the office. And that was really the purpose of that slide. So there are different features of gossip. We have the sign, which is the positivity or negativity of the information being related. So when gossip consists of favorable news, like Mary received a raise, then its sign is positive. But when gossip consists of unfavorable news about others, so Mary got laid off, then its sign is negative. Credibility is another feature of gossip and is the extent to which the gossip is believable. So the extent to which it's accurate and truthful. So saying, Mary was abducted by aliens wouldn't be very credible. And then thirdly, we have work relatedness. So this is the degree to which the gossip is focused on the working aspects of the subject. So their job performance or their career progress, their organizational relationships, so their general behavior within the workplace specifically. So non-work related gossip tends to stray away from profession related topics towards more social and personal stuff. So, Mary got plastic surgery or Scott's marriage is headed towards divorce. Those would be non-work related gossip. And then after outlining the features of gossip, Kurland and Peld outline the different forms of power that can exist within the workplace. So power, as they define it, is the ability to exert one's will, influencing others to do things that they would not otherwise do. So it's the power that a gossiper has over the recipients over their gossip. the recipients of their gossip. So person A is the gossiper, and person B is the one receiving said gossip. So firstly, we have coercive power, and that's the power that emerges from person B's belief that person A has the ability to punish them. So it could be a direct superior subordinate relationship, where you know your boss has the ability to punish you or fire you, or even peer-to-peer relationships where one of those peers has a lot more seniority and inside connections and pull with it or clout within the organization, so that you know if you cross them, you could face negative ramifications. Or even the relationship between a client and an employee and a customer, or a client, and how the said client could, like, let's say you're working at a restaurant, a client could threaten you and say, I'm going to give your restaurant a bad review on Yelp. In that case, they'd be exercising or showcasing coercive power, the ability to punish. And then the flip side, the inverse of coercive power, is reward power. So that's the power that emerges from person B's belief that person A can provide them with desired outcomes or valuable resources. So again, all those relationships I mentioned with coercive power, the superior subordinate relationship, just as your boss could fire you or punish you, they could promote you or reward you in some ways. Or again, someone in the organization with a lot of seniority, with a lot of clout, could pull some strings and do some favors for you. Or that customer could write a positive review on Yelp. That, and all these aspects are characteristic of reward power. And then thirdly, we have expert power. So the power that emerges from person B's belief that person A has special knowledge or expertise that person B needs. So someone who's been in the organization for a long time, who seems to know everything about everyone, they would wield a lot of expert power so that others come to that person seeking their special knowledge or expertise. And then fourthly and finally, we have referent power. And that's the power that emerges from person B's attraction for and desire to be associated with person A. So this is when person A is very cool or desirable, or other people just want to look up to them and emulate them or be around them. So it could be because they're wise, or because of anything. It could be work related. They could be really good at work, or they could be completely non-work related. Maybe someone has a cool spiky haircut. Maybe Kathy from accounting, goes motorcycling on the weekends, or Mike from sales invests a lot in crypto, and people want to talk to him about it in the lunchroom, and they're just being followed around by employees, or rather coworkers, who look up to them. People in those cases have a referent power. So now let's look at the relationship between gossip and power. So again, if we have negative gossip, that's when the sign is negative, and then we have positive gossip, that's when more favorable news is shared. And then each kind of gossip could have a positive or a negative effect on the forms of power that are available to you. So let's go through this chart, shall we? Let's start with negative gossip as it relates to referent power. If people see you spreading a lot of negative gossip in the workplace, then you may be seen as, very petty and just engaged in a lot of small talk. And consequently, you may look less cool or desirable if you engage in such, petty, gossipy talk. In that case, negative gossip would decrease your referent power. Even positive gossip will probably decrease it, but negative gossip will decrease it even more. Or it could have the inverse effect of actually increasing your referent power, making you seem more cool and desirable, because it seems like you're in touch with everyone. You're in the know, you're on the inside of the social network, you're on the inner circle of things, and people may appreciate being included if you decide to share gossip with them, so that people want to get closer to you and be liked by you. But again, it's a fine line, because if you gossip too much, then you could be seen as a big mouth, or someone who will talk to anyone about anything. So that's why there's a plus sign and a minus sign between a positive and negative gossip and referent power, because it could increase it or decrease it depending on how it's used. Next, we have expert power, and you can see that there's only a plus sign between gossip and expert power. So we can surmise that partaking in gossip in your workplace may increase your expert power. People may perceive you as someone who has a lot of knowledge about the work environment and therefore is a valuable source of said knowledge, thus increasing your expert power as you're seen as a valuable source of information. And then let's turn to gossip's relationship with coercive and reward power. So there's a plus sign here too, because negative gossip can increase your coercive power. Because if you spread negative news about someone, and then the recipients of said gossip could assume that you could also spread negative information about them. Like if you're spreading negative gossip about one person, then the person you're talking to could infer that they could be the next target of your coercive power, of your gossip. So they may act differently around you because that's seen as a punishment. Even if you're not explicitly threatening them, you're not saying, hey, I'm going to gossip negatively about you. It's the implicit threat. Like, oh, if this person is so easily talking trash about this other person, they could do it about me too. So therefore, I'm going to behave myself in front of them. I'm going to watch myself in front of them. I'm going to discipline and monitor and surveil myself while in their presence. Therefore, giving that gossiper coercive power over the individual. And then same thing with positive gossip and reward power. It could increase reward power because if someone hears you gossiping positively about someone else, they could think that you're going to gossip positively about them too, to others. So again, they'll be well behaved in front of you in the hopes that you will gossip to others in a positive way about you. So that's the basic relationship between different forms of gossip and different forms of power, and how they could either increase or decrease the amount of power you have available to you. But then we also have these two columns on the side, and these are moderating factors. We have the context in which the gossip is shared, the relationship quality between the gossiper and the gossipee, and the organizational culture surrounding that context. And of course, the features of gossip. Credibility and work relatedness. Depending on those features, this whole chart could change. So let's take a look at a few examples of that. So like I said with the previous slide, gossip increases expert power. But what if one of the moderating factors, the credibility, is at play here? Let's say the gossip that you're sharing has a very low credibility. You will eventually be seen as a non-credible source of information, and they won't believe your future gossip. It's kind of the parable of the boy who cried wolf. You know, you say too many uncredible things, people just aren't going to believe you in the future. They'll just think you aren't to be trusted. And consequently, they won't see you as an expert, so you will lose reward power. You will lose expert power, even though on the previous slide it showed gossip increasing reward power. So this is a feature that could act as an aggravating factor, making it worse, making the effects of that gossip worse. So here's a video from The Office to demonstrate this exact point of gossip credibility. There's an example from The Office to demonstrate anything from working life. It's full of tropes that are, again, relatable to workplace environments.
You can't put words back in your mouth. What you can do is spread false gossip so that people think that everything that's been said is untrue.
Kelly has an eating disorder?
Yeah.
She always eats my lunch.
Anorexia. She's an anorexitic.
We should do something.
Nothing can be done. Just have to tell everybody and hope for the best, I guess.
I'm worried about Erin because she's not a very good worker. I don't know how long she's going to last here.
Really?
Yeah. So, and Andy is a gay.
Andy Bernard?
Mm-hmm.
It's true, your Pam is pregnant.
Really? Yeah.
She's gonna hate being a mom.
What? You think I'm the voice of the Taco Bell dog?
What are you guys talking about? I have a daughter. How could I be a virgin? Hey, has everyone heard a crazy rumor about themselves today?
Yeah, you know what? Let's discredit these rumors.
Yeah, sure, but who's been saying all that stuff?
It's not important, Jim. I just think we shouldn't listen to any of this crap.
Sure, but we should get to the bottom of this. Let's pick a rumor and trace it back to the beginning.
I need to do mine first. Who's been saying that there's another person inside of me, working me with controls?
I heard that from Andy.
I heard it from Aaron.
What?
I heard it from Michael. Michael.
So Michael got his hands on some information that he shouldn't have, and he spread it with people he shouldn't have shared it with, and thus to mitigate the negative effects of his gossip, he just covered his tracks by spreading a bunch of untrue stuff. So people would, again, that boy who cried wolf phenomenon, where people wouldn't believe a single thing he said. And then another feature of gossip that we talked about was the work relatedness. And again, if your gossip is not work related, then this could be another aggravating factor. Because if you're spreading gossip that isn't germane to the work context, then you may be seen as, again, more petty, as a big mouth, someone who is engaged in small trivial things, and you will lose that desirability and coolness factor that is a part of reference power. But if the feature of gossip is work related, then it could act as a mitigating factor, a positive factor in increasing your expert power, your coercive power, your reward power, because you'll be seen as an expert when it comes to things that are pertinent to work, that are relevant to work, such as performance and promotions or demotions and firing, stuff that's directly related to the workplace context. So those are how features of the message, the sign, the credibility, the work relatedness of the gossip can mitigate or aggravate the effects that said gossip has on power. But then there's also the surrounding context of that interaction that could shape and influence the power that's formed through the spreading of gossip. So we have the relationship between the gossiper and the recipient of the gossip. Like I said with the previous slide, if you're sharing negative gossip, that could increase your coercive power because people will be worried that you'll share negative gossip about them too. But if your relationship quality with the person you're sharing with is very high, you have a very close relationship with them, then they'll trust you not to spread similarly negative information about them, in which case it won't increase your coercive power over that person. It'll be a mitigating factor in that case. But if you don't have a good relationship with that person, if you're not, best friends at work, if it's just someone from a different department that you don't see very often and they're spreading negative gossip about someone else, then it will have that coercive effect because you haven't established that bond, that trust to know that they won't spread similar bad stuff about you. So I had a case where it was my first day on the job and the person showing me around was actually spreading negative gossip about all the people who we had encountered. So like they'd introduce me to someone and then as we're walking away, they would say terrible things about that person who I just met. And because me and that person and I didn't have a strong relationship quality, then in my head, I was like, if this person is so easily speaking ill of other people, then they could do the same thing with me just as readily. They could speak ill of me to others. So that increased their coercive power over me because I made sure to keep my lips tight when I'm in their presence and decreased their referent power because I didn't think they were particularly cool or desirable for doing that. But let's say this was a year into our friendship or collegial relationship, then I may have been more receptive to that kind of gossip and I wouldn't have been afraid that they'd say similar things about me, or I wouldn't think less of them in terms of desirability. And then finally, another potentially aggravating or mitigating factor is the organizational culture in which the gossip is circulated. So this is the atmosphere that work is operated in, the roles, the rules, the norms. So some organizational cultures are very strict and formal, and these kinds of cultures could stifle any sort of informal modes of communication like gossip and diminish its ability to increase various forms of power in working contexts. So the workplace culture could be very constraining in terms of the way it discourages any sort of informal communication. And in these types of anti-gossip working cultures, it may be impossible or highly discouraged to even try to gossip about something. And if you do, you may lose referent power or reward power or coercive power, expert power. So finally, we have the Hoffman and Cowan reading on the organizational discourse surrounding the concepts of work and life and the relationship, the balance between the two. So you'll notice organizations and corporations often talking about work-life balance. But what sort of meanings are they trying to communicate through that? Like here we have another stock image depicting the work-life balance. And let's count the aspects that are related to work and the aspects that are related to life. So we have workplace, that's work. We have friends, that's life. We have business, that's work. We have vacation, that's life, but it's defined strictly as a break away from work. So it's defined in working terms. But for now, I'll be generous and keep it on the life side. And then you have money, it's back on the work side. You have health, it's back on the life side, but I feel like that should be more than one. I feel like that should be ranked a bit higher or given more value than, to be an equal to business or workplace. But okay, we have health as just one thing. And okay, we have career, that's a work one. And then we have family, that's a life one. So we have 4 work things and 4 life things in this work-life balance. We have essentially a 50-50 split between work and life, which is the meaning that organizations are trying to instill upon you. That work-life balance entails a 50-50 split. That all of your life considerations, everything outside of work, is only 50% of your life, and then the other 50% is work. And there are all sorts of ideological underpinnings for perpetuating this specific discourse on behalf of corporations. So organizations are tremendously influential in determining how American workers or North American workers negotiate the demands of employment and demands of the rest of their lives outside of employment. So these organizations have not only structured work life, they've structured personal life as well by structuring work life. So it's the infiltration of organizational priorities and values into the personal lives of workers, so that organizations don't just control your the 8 hours a day that you're at work. They control the 24-hour days of your daily life cycle. And this influence on our working lives and our personal lives is constructed through discourse. So the reading is trying to deconstruct our common sense notions of the work-life relationships to show that they're not common sense or natural, but a deliberately cultivated perspective on work and life that has been imbued in us over time, so that we talk about, think about, and act about work and life in the ways defined and deemed acceptable by the reigning discourse set up by the organizations. So these organizations maintain control over work/life issues through the way in which they construct and connect ideas in discourse. So they present the word work and they connect it to 50% of your existence, and they present the word life and they connect it to the other 50% of your existence, as evidenced in that previous slide. They're trying to instill in you the idea through this discourse, through this images, through all the corporate values, that work should be 50% of your life and the other non-work should be only the other half. And again, it's extending the control of organizational influence into our non-working lives, so that corporations have more of a say in what we do or don't do, or we think or don't think, even outside of the strict structure of the workplace. So official organizational discourse requires the attention of discourse analysis, because that discourse is a very important part of the conversation between organizational leaders and employees about the proper relationship between work and the rest of life. So this is where ideology functions by taking the interests of the few, the organizational leaders, and making those interests the interests of the masses, of the many, so that the masses look at the relationship between work and life the same way that the elites want them to. And we can conduct this discourse analysis by examining websites, corporate websites that are strategically crafted by these organizations to get a better understanding of their idea of work/life and how that idea is then transmitted to the masses of employees. So the reading undergoes a culture audit that audits the existing organizational culture, comprising the top most influential companies in shaping this discourse and all of the meanings associated with the terms work and life. So the authors think our conceptions of the work-life relationship has become reified or hardened or fixed or naturalized or sedimented by discourse. And the authors want to denaturalize these sedimented modes of thought, to dissect or deconstruct the discursively constructed work-life relationship and foster more self-reflection about how these organizational messages contribute to our common sense understanding of the quote-unquote proper relationship, the discursively ordained relationship between paid work and the rest of life. So they're trying to answer the questions of what do organizations mean? What are they trying to convey when they use terms such as work, life, and balance? So the intentions behind their shaping of the discourse. And secondly, what are the implications of these meanings for individuals and society? So the impact of these shaped discourse. So these organizations provide work-life programs, which are benefits that companies provide employees that are somehow related to their life outside of the immediate workplace. So health and wellness programs, employee assistance programs, on-site daycare, remote working options. And it's about looking how these work-life programs are framed by the organizations through discourse and what sort of ideological values they're trying to transmit through the offering of these programs and the discursive framing of these programs in the minds of employees. So the vehicle through which ideology is transmitted is through discourse and its various symbols. So in the week on culture, we talked about imperialist ideology and how that's transmitted through Orientalist discourse, and then all the symbols that are part of Orientalist discourse, like that painting whose name escapes me right now, or Babar, or Aladdin, or Mulan. And then the same thing with, or similar thing with the week on medical discourse, how the ideology we were interrogating in that week was neoliberal ideology, the responsibility on the individual, and how that ideology was perpetuated by medical discourse.